I'm delighted to welcome you to this engaging session. This evening, Sadhu Vaswani Institute of Management Studies, a distinguished institution where academic rigor intersects with ethical principles, paving the way for transformative education. SVIMS was established in 2010, a premier self-financed professional institute accredited by AICTE and affiliated to Savitribai Phule Pune University. Our institute is proud to hold a NAC A-grade accreditation and NBA accreditation for MBA program, which is set to continue till 2027. This positions our institute amongst the forefront institutes in Maharashtra in the higher education landscape. Yet our distinction stands beyond mere accolades. It deeply rooted into our ethos, inspired by Sadhu Vaswani mission. Here we regard education as a holistic voyage that cultivates both character and competence. Following in the footsteps of our esteemed founders, Sadhu Vaswani and Revered Dada J.P. Vaswani, who poised that authentic education addresses both intellectual and emotional growth. Our guiding principle is empowerment of women as a catalyst for societal transformation. The mantra, believe and achieve, is not merely a slogan here, it encapsulates our commitment to developing confident, capable and compassionate leaders dedicated to service and integrity. This evening, agenda is a witness to that commitment we have with the event Between the Lines. As we transit from theoretical insights into practical application of leaderships, let us draw connection across various spheres, from values to strategic vision, from academic insights to corporate boardrooms, from the act of believing to actualizing achievement. Let us get this evening filled with ideas and inspiration where intellectual discourse translates into actionable leadership. Now may I request Honorable Mr. Advait sir to please take on the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Dr. Bhagavanti, and thank you, Sadhu Vaswani Institute of Management, for hosting us for today's session. My name is Advait Kurlekar. As always, there are a large number of new faces, so let me do a quick introduction. My colleague here is Eklavya Malhotra, and we represent a consulting company called Apohan Management Consultants. And every month, we've been organizing this event called Between the Lines. As all of you know now, it's a free and open for all event, and except for a few months in COVID, it's an in-person event. Each month we identify a book that we believe is a good book to read. More often than not, it is a recently published book like this book today. And depending on the topic of the book, we invite people from the industry, sometimes two, sometimes three, sometimes one, as you see today. And we have a discussion on the topic or topics emanating from the book. So we've been doing it for some time now, and thanks to all of you, this is our 121st such event. So as you know, today's book is CEO Mindset by Shiv Kumar, which of course Eklavya will talk about. Today's guest, and the only one we have today, is Mr. Hemant Jalan, Managing Director of Indigo Paints. He was our guest in our Between the Lines session number 2 in November 2017, and he's back here on 121st edition. Just to give a quick kind of thing, I think that year Indigo closed their turnover at around 400 crores maybe, and now they are 1300 or something like that crores. So we'll come to Indigo story in any case when we have a chat with him. But once again, thank you so much. As many of you know, Rohan Builders has been supporting us for the last 2 years now, so many thanks to them. Rohit Jarajani and Express Bookstore, they've been supporting us with a bookstore outside. So if you like the book, I would like Eklavya's summary of the book, and you want to buy the book, if you haven't already, you can buy the book outside. So thank you once again, Dr. Bhagavanti and her team for hosting us, and over to you, Eklavya.
Thank you. Am I audible at the back? Okay. So the book that we've chosen today is called The CEO Mindset, and it is by Shiv Kumar. So we've been waiting for a few months now, nearly 2 or 3 months since it first came out. We were hoping to get, first of all, the right person who can probably add more value to the discussion, and also look at, sort of getting the timing right in terms of when to do this particular book as part of our program. So when we got the book and I read it, I told Advait, okay, I think I'm ready to succeed you now because I've understood what is the CEO mindset all about. He curtly replied that, okay, now let's get working on the skill set. So that's another few years for me to go, perhaps. Maybe Shiv Kumar will come up with some other cheat book for people like me who want to sort of accelerate that journey. But that's exactly what this book is supposed to be. Now, I'm sure all of us, especially those who have been regulars in attending our programs, would recollect that we've done a number of leadership books. So the first thought that might come to anybody's mind is that what's new about yet another leadership book? And the honest answer is that not much. But if you delve a little deeper, the one thing which stands out over here is that we rarely come across somebody who's been a practitioner within that role, who's actually writing about his own experiences rather than giving us inspirational stories of other CEOs or other business leaders or founders, entrepreneurs, and what have you. So Shiv Kumar is somebody who has spent 20 years in the CEO role, and that is across a diverse range of industries. So he was the CEO of Philips Consumer Electronics Division. That's where he started off his CEO journey from. Then he moved on to PepsiCo. Thereafter, he was in Nokia actually after that. Yeah, he moved on to Nokia. He went to then PepsiCo, where he had an extended stint across different geographies as the CEO. And then finally Aditya Birla International also, where he was the CEO and president for the entire Aditya Birla Group. So he has spent a number of years working in this role. And the entire book is built on the premise that it's not supposed to be an inspirational tale of how one CEO surmounted the odds and made it for all of us to look up to. This book is not inspirational, it is actually instructional, which is probably something that was lacking in this entire space of other leadership books. Sometimes you need an instructional book which tells you exactly how to get from A to B. And if you look at the cover of the book and if you look at the tagline below the title, it talks about the leadership mindset and the behaviors. So the entire book's focus is essentially in terms of what are the behaviors that you need to inculcate, which you need to absorb, which you need to assimilate and hopefully demonstrate so that the results will be just an outcome. So the book doesn't talk so much specifically about the actions, it only talks about the mental frameworks, it talks more about the mental side of things. And fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, because as consultants we really love to see 2x2 frameworks and 3x3s. I'm sure Hemant can also relate to that from his previous lifetime. But this book doesn't have any of that. And that is something which Shiv Kumar is also known for. I think he's probably one of those few legitimate management thinkers or management gurus that we have in India today. So somebody who's managed to pen an entire book on CEO behavior without coming up with any frameworks as such, that itself is a testimony to the clarity which he has or which he possesses or which he brings to this job. And that is what he's attempting to translate over here for aspirational CEOs. The background to the book is that as part of all his teaching curriculum which he does across the country and rather across the globe, one of the questions that he frequently asks his MBA students, and I know we have a lot of MBA students over here with us today, and I'm sure this is a question which even if it has not been asked to you at this young age, it is certainly something which you're harboring at the back of your mind. How many of you would like to someday become the CEO of an organization? Without specifying whether it is a large, small, or a mid-sized organization, but how many people would want to become a CEO? I can see a few hands going up over here. And in Shiv Kumar's experience, he writes that nearly 90% of the class, especially in the Indian B schools, they would always raise their hands in affirmation. Unfortunately, it doesn't end at that. When probed a little deeper in terms of the reasons or the motivations for becoming a CEO, the cliched responses would be in terms of the status, that it accords to itself, the power that the position sort of, lends itself to, and then, of course, the money, which seems to be the most lucrative aspect of the job. So, yes, people want to become a CEO, but do they want to become a CEO for the right reasons? That is probably a question mark. But at the same time, it is also a glaring reflection of how the role of a CEO is perhaps viewed in today's society. And he goes on to write that this is more so in the Indian context because our businesses, as we know, more than 90% family businesses, the entire business ecosystem is way more relationship driven as opposed to the Western world, where it is more transaction or task oriented. So he says that one of the primary objectives for writing the book was to actually dispel some of those long-standing myths about the CEO role, and also to present all those inefficiencies which he has observed in terms of the CEOs that he's either worked under, or those whom he has coached, or he has been mentoring, or he has interacted with in the space of him being a public entity. And the other thing about this book is that it does not single out any single person. It does not single out any particular CEO as being sort of exemplary of the behavior that is desired. Rather, it gives us a generic view through anecdotes in terms of what CEOs seem to be doing wrong and what you should be doing at a younger age if you want to get into that corner office. And the reason for that is plainly obvious. You do not develop the CEO mindset when you become a CEO. It's not like an epiphany simply dawns upon you the day you are christened or anointed as the CEO. You do not undergo some kind of metamorphosis and suddenly all that intelligence is now residing within you. It has to be a series of definitive steps which you're taking from way before you actually land that job, that coveted title of a CEO. Interestingly, Shiv Kumar yesterday has run a poll on his LinkedIn account asking, can you guess how many times he's used the word CEO in this particular book? I think I have a good chance of nailing it by the end of the day, or I might just exceed it also. So the whole idea of this book is that what is the mindset? And again, a testimony to Shiv Kumar's own behavior and his mindset. He says that if I were to be the only one to espouse on all of these areas, then you'll receive a very unidimensional view from somebody who has served as CEO in only 3 companies. I mean, for us, 3 companies, amazing companies. He's ex-Levers, spent nearly 19-20 years in Levers. While we may look up to him, he says that I don't want you to come back thinking that this is Shiv Kumar's point of view. So he's actually roped in 13 other CEOs from various industries like education, executive search, FMCG, retail, technology services. And in most of the sections of the book, he has asked them to narrate their own experiences after he has listed out what he believes are the key attributes which are pertaining to that part of the CEO role. So if he talks about how do you land the CEO job, while he writes at length about how it can be, something which you can either get as an insider or as a lateral, or it can be somebody from the board of directors also who can step in at times. After all of that, after he gives his own individual perspectives, he reaches out to all these other CEOs, and then he's provided the transcript of those conversations where they give their own 2 bits in terms of how they view it, either within their own industry or the world at large. And that's exactly sort of, again, reiterating the point which he makes early on in this book, that as a CEO, do not make the mistake of learning more from within your industry or within your company. Don't go seeking for answers just by diving deeper within your own organization or within the industry which you operate in, because chances are that you'll get the same old answers that everybody has anyway been coming up with for decades. He says that today's CEO, largely thanks to the role which is played by technology, he says today's CEO has to have a multilateral view of the business model, because in today's day and age, the CEO is dealing with the value chain where they might just be occupying only one part of it, but they are extremely dependent on other incumbents which may not even be from their own industry, but they need to be looking outside to get some of the answers for their own problems. And he gives a very simple example. He says that even back when he was probably just a management trainee, or he was just an area sales manager rather, in levers, and he was handling the beverages and soft drinks category over there, he was facing this issue that the inventories were piling up at the distributor level. The sales figures were always lagging behind all the traditional rivals. And just about anybody he would turn to within the company would come up with the same old answers: run this distributor meet, you need to give more distributor incentive program, you need to tie up with this retailer, that retailer, offer them more margins. Fed up with all of that and things which are not giving any results, he actually reached out to one of their key competitors, which was Campa Cola. He identified who was his counterpart, who was the area sales manager for Campa Cola in Tamil Nadu region. He reached out to him. He asked him that, can you teach me about this distribution business, how you guys are nailing it for so many years? You're the market leaders over here. This was way back in the 1980s. He said, would you mind teaching me how have you guys actually gone about in terms of refining and streamlining your distribution model? And that guy gave him very sage-like advice. He said, the problem with you levers guys is that you think of everything as detergent powders or soap bars or your deodorants and all these things. You tend to paint every category with the same brush. And you think that the same rules of distribution will apply to each category. And he said the biggest mistake which you must be making without really knowing too much about the entire model or the inner workings of it, he said that your inventory, if you're saying that you have an inventory problem at your distributor stock points, he said that itself shows your lack of understanding, because in soft drinks and beverages, inventory has to be at the retail point. There should be zero inventory at the distributor point. He said in soft drinks and beverages, you cannot afford to run the way you do it for your other product categories, the way you're doing it for your soaps and detergents. You have to make sure that all of the inventory is at the retail point. And with this knowledge, he went back to his director within HUL. He approached him tentatively and he said, can we try this out in my particular territory just for 1 quarter and see if it gives any results? He went and asked for permission to change the policy. The director asked him that, where did you come up with this idea from? And he honestly replied that I got it from Campa Cola. I just went and asked them, and this is what they seem to be doing, and they're doing way better than us. The director agreed and told him that, okay, I give you 1 quarter. In 1 quarter, the sales tripled. More distributors wanted to work with them thereafter, and the existing distributors also ensured that they remained with that particular brand for years to come, simply because now they felt that, now the brand also seems to have its skin in the game. So he says that sometimes going out and looking for answers rather than asking those same questions to the same old people within the company might just give you a different approach, which you need to be willing to try out. And again, maybe it's also, perhaps we have to give credit where it's due, maybe Shiv Kumar also had the good fortune or the luxury of working in organizations where such behavior was encouraged. Like he mentions about one particular company where he was working, chances are that it must be Unilever, because after that he's always been in extremely senior positions, where he says that in a meeting with the CEO, where the CEO was blasting all of them for not meeting their targets again, yet another month, yet again deficit in targets, he actually asked his CEO, do we come to work every day to meet our targets, or do we come to work every day to do better than we did yesterday? Again, to give credit where it's due, he says that this particular CEO, he actually reflected upon what he said. And he said that next day he called me to his cabin and he asked him that, what did you really mean by that? And what do you expect me to do with this one statement that you have made? Shiv Kumar clarified to him that, I believe we are going down a wrong path where we are becoming extremely aggressive without really understanding what really plagues the organization, without really taking feedback from the ground. Maybe we need to spend more time in the market rather than sitting in the boardroom and conducting so many reviews every day. He says that the CEO did not change his behavior, but neither did he pull him up for his seeming, audacity to bring up this point. So he says this is yet another sort of a hallmark of a good CEO, that are you willing to take feedback? The other thing, which is also one of the reasons why he says that he's written this book, is that we talk a lot about building learning organizations. We talk a lot about the importance of having a learning culture and continuous learning. He says that learning is the single area where he feels that most Indian CEOs perform extremely poorly on that count. He says it is all very good for the CEO to talk about learnings, about people having that learning mindset, growth mindset. And he says all of this, he says that I find it very double-faced, because CEOs are talking about this in town halls, in all their public engagements. But when it comes to self-learning, he says that he's not come across too many CEOs who are willing to actually set aside time to learn what's happening in their industry, to learn what's happening in the world of management, to try and understand that are there some new theories or prevailing business models or cross-industry learnings. He says, how many CEOs do you really find who are actually willing to be part of jury panels when all these business plan competitions take place at a nationwide level, or even if it is like at a regional or city-wide level? He says, how many CEOs actually bother to take time out to come out there and listen to new pitches or participate in industry forums? He says most of the time what he finds is that all such platforms get misused by CEOs either trying to show their own prowess or provide some kind of justification for the actions that they are performing or that they are undertaking on a day-to-day basis. And he says this becomes like an old boys club where everybody is just lauding each other without anybody willing to call out things for what they really are, which is that in India, most CEOs tend to slack off after they've got that position. Now again, this essentially gets captured in this, what he calls a CEO mindset model, which is given an acronym Charlie. Like if anybody follows Shiv Kumar on the social platforms like LinkedIn, you'd know that he really has an affinity for coming up with new acronyms or abbreviations, and he really seems to have a knack for it. Charlie over here stands for the key qualities, each letter denoting a quality which he believes that young managers need to start demonstrating so that they start at least acting and behaving like CEOs, even if they are not actually in that position right now, or even if it will take many years to reach that much wanted role, at least in their own limited sphere of influence, they can start demonstrating what a CEO is supposed to do. So it starts with communication, probably has to be the bedrock for any effective CEO. It goes on to holistic thinking, which is essentially what was illustrated in going beyond your own industry, beyond your own organization. Like he says that he had a rule during his entire corporate stint that he would not take up a competing job offer after he has worked in a particular industry. And he said that I would get so many offers to be the CEO or the business head, or basically even become the chairman of competing organizations after I had completed my stint at one particular company. He said, but I always consciously avoided. And in fact, he goes on to say that you consciously need to sever ties with your old organizations and try to keep all your professional interactions to a minimum. I find that very surprising, but again, something which seems to have worked for him. At the same time, he also says that you need to identify mentors within every organization. So for him, whether it was R. Gopalakrishnan from Levers, or Indra Nui, who was his boss in PepsiCo, or the entire sort of Fin management team while he was at Nokia, he says that he maintained relations with them always just to ensure that he has a sounding board for problems that he was not able to crack on his own in later organizations. So holistic thinking has to be followed by absolute standards. That's the A within Charlie. Absolute standards, he goes on to explain that you cannot just say that I am better than other CEOs in my industry, at least I don't indulge in these malpractices, at least I'm not that typical FMCG CEO who's ensuring that, even if goods are sent on the 2nd of April, they are invoiced on 31st of March, which we know is normal SOP for most FMCG companies. He says that I always wanted to ensure that my standard should not be benchmarked against others within the industry or within my region. He said it had to be the best that I could deliver, and he said I would also hold others accountable to that. He had a good practice that whenever he would receive any sort of management proposals from his direct reports, he would rate them on a scale of 0 to 100 and send it back with his comments. And he said that his threshold, internal threshold, used to be that it needs to be above 80 for him to finally take a decision in terms of go or no go for the investment required. And after a point of time, he said that all his direct reports became so attuned to his way of working that 80 was always the minimum that they scored even in the first attempt. And then he said my second filter used to be that even if it came back with an 80 in the first go or second go also, like if it came back with just sort of, some kind of excuse or some justification that no, we cannot do anything beyond this, he said I would only ask them one question, that are you sure this is your absolute best and there's nothing more that you can do? He said if they would say a yes, I would blindly go ahead and take a decision then, because I knew that I've pushed them to the limit. Anything beyond that is not being fair on them. So that's the absolute standard which he used to hold others also accountable by, as well as himself. And the R within Charlie was in terms of reframing of issues or problems. To put it very simply, he says that your job description, whether it's as a CEO or it could be as a management trainee or a sales manager, accounts manager, like even a supervisor, clerical role, he says your job description should only tell you why your job exists. It is up to you to reframe the entire context to explain and clarify how you're going to add value within the boundaries of that role. So don't play or don't take the job description as an excuse. Use it simply as an existential document, but don't live or abide only by what is contained therein. The L or lay allegiance to any organizational success if you've only spent 2 or 3 years within that company. So one of the things which again I think it's really sound advice, he says that if you're spending minimum 4 to 5 years in a given company, especially after you hit middle management, and he says unless you have terrible luck on your side, chances are that you're going to get that promotion, you're going to get that corner office eventually, or you're going to be somewhere near that corner office, even if that's not going to be the ultimate endpoint, but you will be at least on that floor, if not somewhere near that corner office. But he says you need to give it time, which he doesn't find too many people willing to do nowadays. The I within Charlie is about investing in people, which he's done richly enough through his years. And the final one, which is E, which is sort of bookended. So communication and E, these are the two bookends of this entire thing called Charlie, which is ethical execution, which is where he says that you cannot have any compromises at all. And there are various ways, various anecdotes in which he drives these points home. And again, like a true sort of a marketing guru, he's come up with his own version of the 4 good P's and the 4 bad P's for CEOs to follow. So he has this PERT framework also, not the PERT in CPM, which I'm sure some of the students who are pursuing operations management would be aware of. His PERT is more about essentially prioritization, exercise. I'll not get into that for obvious reasons. Reflection and time management. He says follow these PERT principles if you want to continue being in that CEO role. And the 4 fatal P's, which he says, which are probably going to be sort of, like make sure that you don't leave a legacy and you might be shown the door earlier than is required, is first of all, picking up sycophants. He talks about the fact that the biggest mistake you can do as a CEO is that in the first 100 days, you decide to bring somebody from your earlier organization to the new one. He says, even if you don't attempt to, even if you follow all the rules, even if you make it crystal clear, and he gives his own example. He faced it. He said, I did not even interview them. I just put forth their names to the board. They interviewed them among a pool. Obviously, the pool comprised of certain CXOs who were already within that organization. He said nobody allowed them to succeed. And he said, ultimately, it was my failure. And also the fact that, you cannot always have people who are just going to do your bidding and not really going to be able to speak their own mind. The other P which he talks about is in terms of past forward. He says a lot of CEOs tend to overestimate that historical results will always follow in the same pattern, and hence there's a certain complacency which sinks in. The other P is in terms of pitting people against each other, which also he says that a lot of CEOs tend to follow this as part of internal politics just to keep people on their toes, or they believe that it's going to foster healthy competition. And he goes on to say that in all of his instances of having observed these from close quarters, he cannot think of any such instance where actually it turned out for the positive. There never was any healthy competition. It always ultimately devolved into just some kind of a blame slanging match. And the final P, which is probably the most important of all, is procrastination. In that, he actually gives a pretty good insight. He says that if your CEO is repeatedly calling for meetings which last for more than 30 to 60 minutes to discuss the same issue, or keeps on asking for more data, for more analysis, he says chances are that they really don't know what they're doing. Or they're not empowered enough to take a decision, so they're just dithering on that and trying to find excuses to prolong the fact that they need to take a decision either way. And without getting further into it, I think one of the most useful things, especially for some of the youngsters, would be the entire section that he devotes on how to work with insecure CEOs. What are those telltale signs? And some of those things are eye-opening. It is incredible to read that Shiv Kumar has actually delivered presentations to CEOs where the CEO has ultimately been snoring away, and when he looked to his marketing head that should I stop, should I pause, should somebody wake him up, and the marketing head turns around and says to him, it's okay, you keep on going on. I'm sure he's listening even though he's sleeping. To top it all, he also says, and this is anybody's guess which company it might have been, he says that there was a time when he was appointed as the chairman of a company, and when he reached the headquarters of that organization to assume the role, the incumbent chairman refused to leave his cabin for the next 2 months as a show of protest. And Shiv Kumar had to find other areas to work from while that person's ego was suitably taken care of. So there are a lot of anecdotes within the book which you can make out come from close quarters, come from the perspective of somebody who has lived to tell the tale. And that itself is why this book probably is quite different from the other books within the same sphere, because it's not very often that we get to hear this perspective from somebody who has served in that role, and also other people who have been closely associated within that world of CEOs. So that's CEO mindset, not really in a nutshell, but more or less. And the best thing about the book is that you don't even need to read the book. You don't even need to probably pick up a copy of the book. If you're following Shiv Kumar online, he's been putting out so many excerpts and so many videos, extracts, or little nuggets of information that frankly, it just makes for good reading once in a while. Go through any of his LinkedIn posts and you'll basically pick up what is the essence of the book. So that's the CEO mindset. If you still are keen, you can definitely pick up a copy of the book outside. And we'll get to hear more from Hemant now in terms of how much of this he subscribes to and what is the reality behind all of this.
Late 70s was not a time for somebody who's already done a double graduation in the US to come back to India. That was, was it the, and that was not the
first. It was not fashionable at that time.
Yeah, it was fashionable to go there.
Most of my batchmates, I think hardly 5% of us chose to come back at that time. But For me, the decision was easy. I mean, I didn't care about what the rest of the world was doing. 3 years in the US was a lovely paid vacation. Everything sponsored by scholarships. I didn't spend a penny from my pocket.
Okay.
Had a great time both at Stanford and Chicago. But never felt tempted to live in that country. I mean, I felt that I belong here. This is where my roots are. And I don't want to be a second class citizen anywhere.
Wow.
And, as the days was approaching for my degree to get over, and all my friends realizing that I seriously mean it, that I'm going to go back the day I get my degree, the pressure that came on me from the Indian diaspora living there was tremendous. Because I guess they secretly all felt guilty about having chosen to live in the United States. And everywhere I went, people said, "Are you crazy? Of course, we all want to go back, work for a few years, get some experience, and then go back." I said, "I haven't seen anybody doing that, so it's either now or never." And there used to be a lot of pressure on me, but I didn't care about it. I was very sure about what I was doing. And literally the night I got my MBA degree at Chicago, the next day I was on a flight out of the US, and I've never regretted it once
Wow.
in the last 45 years.
Wow. Wow. But what was the urgency? I mean, like, why not spend, work there, earn money, experience, and then come back?
I felt that it would never happen.
Ah, okay. You don't have to get into that trap.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that trap, so I just wanted to get back.
And then you joined AF Ferguson and Company
That's right, that was my first job.
as an MBA, foreign returned MBA at that point in time.
That is right. Express Towers.
Yes, that's where I spent my first few years of consulting as well. Okay, so I was reading about it, and it didn't come up in AFF annals, but there is some story about Rishi Kapoor and Simi Grewal as part of your consulting career.
When did I tell you that story? So the day I joined A.F. Ferguson, the partner who I was assigned to, he said, "I've got a really cute, interesting assignment for you. And this is a market study for a discotheque."
Oh wow!
Well, that sounded strange. So there was this fairly, I don't want to use the word sleazy, but that
Shady.
comes close. Yes, a slightly shady hotel near the Bombay airport called Hotel Airport Plaza or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it still exists or the name has changed or whatever.
Decrepit building just when you turn on right.
I think it's still there.
Ah.
There's some maybe slightly morphed name, and it had a fairly shady discotheque called Takeoff. Now, in those days, discotheques were very popular. I think they've gone out of fashion now. And the in thing was Studio 29
Okay.
on Marine Drive, run by Sabira Merchant,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
was a
yeah.
great socialite, writer, and TV personality. And that was the in place, Studio 29. And down the street at the end of Nariman Point in Overoys, at the bottom, they had a cellar. I think Taj had something, I forget what the name was. So those were the happening places. And the owner of this hotel, this airport plaza, was himself a Wharton MBA.
Oh wow! So not a shady person. Then.
No, he was not a shady person. And he approached A.F. Ferguson that, I want to have the most sophisticated disco in this city, and I know I'm nowhere close to it, so help me.
Okay.
It was a very small fee. I think it's the smallest consultancy assignment that AFF must have ever taken in its life. They took it on for the novelty because it looks good on the CV, You've done a market study for a discotheque.
Which year was this?
1980.
80. Wow. Okay.
So it sounded like a great assignment. So the first 2 weeks of my job, every night was spent inside discotheques in Bombay. Now, one felt a little awkward because patrons had come to enjoy a romantic evening, and I would somehow thrust myself upon them and start taking an interview to find out what they liked and what they did not like.
Those were the pen and paper days, of course.
Sounds really
Yeah.
good.
So one felt like, you know, a kebab mein haddi, but I think I was treated well. Met some interesting people. Uh, I remember once in Studio 29, there was this guy who's now a big time lawyer, is now an old man, Tony Jethmalani, son of Ram Jethmalani. I still remember him being surrounded by 10 or 11 gorgeous girls.
Like father, like son.
I don't know whether his father did that or not, you know, and I was envying him, good God. And he was a young guy that time and all that, so had to visit various homes of models and young stars, etc., to take their interviews, who are known to be frequent, visitors to discotheques. So it was a short assignment. I think it lasted 2 to 3 weeks or something, and we got actually a lot of material out of it, and we presented it to the owner, and he accepted our recommendations completely without any changes. And he shut the disco down for, I think, a couple of months, renovated it, and invited us, of course, on the opening night after renovation. And there was Simi Garewal and Rishi Kapoor, dancing on the dance floor, and he was thrilled. He said, "This is what I wanted. This is the kind of crowd, you know." So that's a little bit.
Nice. But then from consulting, you went into your first entrepreneurial venture. So what prompted that? Indigo wasn't your first entrepreneurship.
No, by no stretch of imagination. No, that was, my father was a small-time businessman in Patna. That's where I'd done my high school education before going to IIT. And I was actually quite happy at A. Ferguson. I enjoyed the variety of jobs and, you know, the kind of consultancy. I mean, that time it was probably the only known consulting company in India. All these BCGs and McKinseys had not entered India for a long time after that. So it was the go-to place for any company that wanted. And, you know, my next assignment was with Mr. Aditya Birla, where the final presentation, I remember as a 24-year-old standing in Aditya Birla's chamber. Those days we didn't have laptops and all those things, so there was the over OHPs and those transparencies and making a whole presentation. So it was a great ego trip. A consultancy assignment for HUL, one for Ponds and various companies like that. I think my father had a business setback, and I was the only son, and I just took an overnight decision that I have to go and join him and help him out. Salaries weren't great in those days that on a youngster salary I could have afforded to support them or something.
15 years later, AFF salaries were still at that.
So I just took a decision, finished up whichever consultancy assignments was assigned to me, and then went back to Patna, not knowing a thing as to what I'm going to do. And that was 82.
Okay.
So I was in Patna from 82 to 96, about 14 years, during which time I set up some chemical companies, etc.
So you turned around that business per se.
No, I didn't touch the existing business.
Okay.
Started out with some trading, and then set up a small SSI chemical unit, then a slightly larger one, and then a yet larger one. And that is when I had a failed kind of large startup or something like that, and everything collapsed around me.
Okay.
And I had to shut things down and look for a job to fend for my family.
Oh, okay.
So it was that simple.
So after 13, 14 years of being an entrepreneur, you had to actually, because of the setback.
Absolutely.
And then how did you get your job? I mean, those days failed entrepreneurship was not so called.
No, it was not. It was not a badge of honor like what it would be today. So it was tough. And Vedanta Group, which that time was called Sterlite, I mean, we had a vague connection with a family, and a family friend put me in touch with Anil Agarwal. I flew down to Bombay to meet him, and he said, "We are setting up a copper smelter in Tuticorin.
Okay.
So why don't you go there?" And Tuticorin sounded like the end of the world. So I tried,
Okay.
soft talking him कि बॉम्बे में बैठते हैं. He said नहीं.
There was-
रहेगा वो सब फैक्ट्री में ही
There was no
बैठना
work from home
पड़ेगा.
there.
So I said, I'll think about it tonight. Next day I went back and I said, okay, I'm willing to consider it because that was his biggest venture at that time. So I said, can I go and have a look at that place? He said, sure. Went there. When I saw that town and everything, I almost cried. But I said, ठीक है. Took up the challenge.
Wow.
So worked there for 3 years, 96 to 99.
Interesting. Before we come to Mr. Agarwal, you mentioned about Mr. Birla. Any particular kind of takeaway from your interaction with him as a young 24-year-old consultant?
So I remember I was in awe, and all our senior partners and the partner in charge of AF Ferguson. Obviously, Mr. Adit Birla was a very big name at that time, so everybody had to be in attendance. So I remember I was being driven by our partner in charge to Industry House, where he used to sit, Mr. Adit Birla, and our partner in charge told me, Hemant, tell me in 2 minutes. What is the summary of the work that we have done? So I gave him a 2-minute briefing. He said, now in 2 minutes, tell me, what do you think is the other work we can do for him? So that was his business. And that was all he knew about the assignment. But throughout the presentation, he was sitting right next to Mr. Birla, and Mr. Birla must have thought that this gentleman, Mr. L.K. Ratna, was completely involved in the assignment, which he wasn't. But anyway, Adit Birla was very happy with the output, and we thought it was the end, at the end of 2 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever it was. And he just said, you people have to join me for lunch.
Okay.
So I think our partners had other appointments, but you can't say no to Mr. Adit Birla. So he took us to his top floor, and we were having lunch. Then he called us after lunch, took us back to his cabin, and picked up the phone and told his PA, just cancel all my appointments for the afternoon. So we knew we are stuck here for the full day. And I remember his exact words to our partner in charge was, I want to be the most professionally run company in this country, and I know I'm nowhere close to that.
Wow.
Help me. Those were the exact words. So Mr. L.K. Ratna, who was then the partner in charge, said, that's a tough place to start from. Why don't you show me some MIS reports that you received from your units, and maybe the company that we have just done a long consulting assignment for you, Indian Rayon, just show us the MIS report. And he gets a monthly MIS report, and he tossed across his latest MIS report for Indian Rayon in Verawal, Gujarat. And our partner in charge was going through it, and there were a lot of hand notes and red marks and this and that. And at one place, this Birla's had this Partha system, which is very talked about, where detailed kind of budgeting and this thing. So the milk consumption of their guest house in Verawal had gone a little way beyond some level that was budgeted. Milk consumption of the guest house in Verawal. And that was circled in red. And I remember Mr. Ratna telling Mr. Adit Birla that this is going too far, Mr. Birla. Surely these things don't merit your attention. To which Adit Birla's reply was, I'm sorry, that is one thing that I disagree with you with.
Okay.
He said, in our organization, the amount does not matter. It is the principle and the philosophy of it. He said, there is a man in the guest house who's controlling all these consumables there. He's been given a budget, he's been given an allowance, a variable, an allowable variance.
Tolerance, yeah.
He's gone beyond that. So it will be highlighted to me. Either the man has a valid answer, or tomorrow he leaves my organization. And, my mind suddenly went back as I was quietly listening to all this thing, that this is one organization where the lowest clerk understands the value of whatever small work he's doing, what impact it has on the ultimate P&L of the company. They all understand that. And I've not seen that in levers or bonds or all the celebrated companies. And I think that is what made that organization great. And years later, when I was working with Anil Agarwal, I found almost identical traits with him.
Okay.
कि amount से मतलब नहीं है. You know, it's the principle of it. Every little penny, he used to say, culture खराब हो जाएगा organization. So it's not that middle management will look after the smaller things. He says nothing doing. He says anything that looks suspicious, the amount could be 1,000 rupees, it doesn't matter. I remember when I was at Sterlite, once we had to buy a new oxygen plant. And I said, we badly need it, otherwise you won't be able to increase production. So he said, kitne ka aega? So I said, about 80 crores, which at that time was big, 30 years ago. So he said, can you do without it? I said, no. So he said, तो फिर क्यों पूछते हो? खरीदो. So he said, if you can't do without it, so there's nothing to ask, go and buy it. But he said, खरीदने में अगर 1,000 रुपया भी ज़्यादा खर्चा करोगे तो लड़ाई हो जाएगा मेरा. So, you know, they were very, very particular about even the smaller things to set a certain culture in the organization. And those were some very, I could see the similarity between his thinking and what I had noticed with Mr. Adit Birla. Of course, he had passed away by then, but you know, I think these Indian entrepreneurs who've been very successful have a very similar bent of mind, which is very different from the MNCs.
Yeah.
Which is why Indian businesses today eat MNCs for lunch.
Okay, we'll come to the paints industry later. And then after Sterlite, Copper, you went back. You started Indigo. How? Why? What happened? I mean, how did you suddenly come to?
So I was doing very well professionally. It was very rewarding to be the CEO of such a large, you know, core sector company. At that time, it was 1,000 crore investment, which was very big at that time. So it was a very thrilling experience. A lot of international exposure. One was using every technical bit of your MBA education, you know, hedging and forex and everything. So it was great thrill, but I think I was realizing that I've been an entrepreneur too long. I'm not suited to take orders.
In spite of such delegation or freedom that 80 crore क्यों पूछ रहे हो kind of thing.
Yeah, even despite that. So I felt that this is not what I was want to do. Something inside was burning all the time. I mean, many times there were great learnings from him. There's no doubt. I admired him and I still do. But many times when you're given an order that you know is blatantly wrong and you're forced to follow it, it rankles. So, नहीं बर्दाश्त होता था, नहीं बर्दाश्त होता था.
Okay.
So,
Was there a trigger?
yeah, there was something. Basically, he had decided to move to London.
Okay.
And he was trying to force me to move to London with him and to be kind of like his right-hand man.
Okay.
And I didn't want to do that. And he couldn't understand it. And I said, if I wanted to do that, why did I come back from the US?
Yeah.
So I had the world at my feet. I could have got any job that I wanted. He couldn't understand it. He felt that he was giving a lifetime opportunity. So he started making life difficult for me to force me to say yes.
Oh, okay.
That's when it, you know, started feeling a little ugly. So I said politely one day, I think I'm just going to leave.
But then the next option would have been at least try another job before you start dabbling in entrepreneurship. That didn't happen.
No, as I said, the whole reason was that I felt I was not cut out for a job. So one of my seniors at AF Ferguson, who had been a manager when I was a young consultant or a senior consultant there, he had a management practice in Bombay on total quality management. And in fact, we had used him at Sterlite with very great results and everything. So he told me that if you want to do something on your own. Why don't you join me as a partner? And I could do with a partner in Pune because we have a lot of clients in Pune and I'm based in Mumbai. I just said, okay.
Back to consulting.
Yeah, I thought I'd enjoy it.
Okay.
But after being in the thick of, shall I say, line management for so long, within 4 months I realized that this is deathly boring for me. I can't take it.
Okay.
So I started thinking about what to do, and that is when Indigo Paints was born.
Okay. And why paints? I mean, I know you're chemical and you're
So I had a small, one of my units in Bihar, which was still running, which was the smallest of all the ones that I'd set up, was making a very basic chemical called calcium chloride. It was a very crude thing. It was a small company with hardly 2 crores of annual turnover or something. And that chemical has multifarious uses. So once when I was in Pune, I traveled to Patna to my office and I found a lot of guys in dhoti kurta sitting outside in the office. And I asked my manager, "Is a kaun hai?" So one of the minor uses of calcium chloride was that it was a small raw material that went in the manufacture of cement paint.
okay.
Cement paint is a very low level paint, generally made by the small scale, tiny sector. So he said, all these guys are owners of cement paint units. They're all growing and expanding. Sab calcium chloride kharidne aaye hain.
Okay.
And I would say that somewhat condescendingly what came out of my mouth that day was, ये गधे लोग अगर बना सकते हैं तो हम लोग भी बना लो ना.
Okay.
We can probably do a better job of it. And that's how it started.
Oh, okay. So did Indigo start with cement paint?
It started with that.
Oh,
For the first 6 months, that's all we went.
And why Pune? I mean, you had any connection?
No, I was already living in Pune
Oh.
doing that consultancy.
Okay.
And by then I had realized that you need not be where your manufacturing location is. You know, that Sterlite and other things that taught me that. And sometimes it's better to be away from the scene of manufacturing or something and delegate it to others. It's a humbling experience to realize that sometimes you're the cause of the company's problems and not the solution to it. You know? So people are happier if you're a little distance away. So I continued to live in Pune because it felt like a great city. And the idea was, even at that time in a very nascent stage, कि ultimately इसको एक all India company बनाना है. तो सब जगह अगर मार्केट करना है तो आप पुणे में रहिए, चाहे कन्याकुमारी में रहिए, चाहे जम्मू में रहिए, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I said we continue to live in Pune, and
Wow. Okay.
so it was accidental.
Okay. And then I would assume that, like any new company, first few years were not the best years, the struggling years for Indigo as well.
Oh, of course it was. I had no capital. So after about a year, I remember, our first year, I remember our annual turnover was 70 lakhs or something.
Okay.
So that's how small as it gets. And at Sterlite, I was accustomed to having a small 6-seater aircraft at my disposal.
Okay.
And here I'm traveling on AC 3-tier train because we couldn't afford anything more at that time. But having been an entrepreneur before, these things are the last things that bother you.
Okay.
ठीक है, चलेगा.
But now paint has always been a competitive industry, right? I mean, biggies, like you said, multinational companies as well as Indian companies, Asian Paints, etc. So how did you sort of make your presence felt? I mean, at the end of the day, it's the painter that matters. Distribution, painter, incentives. For a small company, you can't afford to, cut price, give more incentives. How did you sort of penetrate the market?
First 5-6 years was just, you don't think of strategy or anything. You can't afford to think of strategy. Is a luxury to think of at that time. It is how to get over from one month to another.
Correct. Payroll.
And how to survive. So first 5 years went in a blur, but each year was significantly better than the previous one. So one knew that one was on the right path and one was expanding into more and more paint products, much more than cement paint, and slowly spreading our footprint one state every year, gradually going up. बट उस समय तो और कुछ थॉट नहीं आया था. I think in about 2005 or 6, about 5 years after we had started the company, all paint companies we buy our pigments from specialized pigment manufacturer. Nobody manufactures it in-house. So Sudarshan was one big supplier based in Pune.
Yeah.
So I was sitting in Sudarshan's office one day, and they also have their shade cards of pigments.
Oh.
You know, so I was just going through their shade cards, and I saw a golden colored pigment and I saw a silver colored pigment which caught my attention, and I asked them, ये क्या है? So they said, नहीं, आपके काम की चीज नहीं है, ये जाता है nail polish में, lipsticks में and everything. And I said, why not paint? They discussed and they said, can't think of a good reason, but किसी ने किया नहीं अभी तक. तो ऐसे थोड़ा सैंपल दीजिए, ट्राई करते हैं. बनाया, आराम से पेंट बन गया, बहुत अच्छा बना. Started trying to market it. Of course, that time we were, I think we must have been 5 crores in annual turnover or something. So you can't even dream of advertising or something at that time.
But this was gold and silver paint.
Yeah, so gold,
Oh.
silver, copper, bronze, all these metallic
Metallic,
kinds of
okay.
finishes, you know. And you can paint just like a normal paint, and it will give you a golden look or a, you know, a copper look or whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
So sab jagah by word of mouth, you know, the sales team would take it across. The dealer would say, हाँ अच्छा तो है, but Asian paints क्यों नहीं बनाता है? I don't know वो क्यों नहीं बनाता है, but ये चीज है. But by word of mouth, that started catching on in whatever areas we were marketing in. And then I thought that, you know, by then I think we are kind of getting out of the survival mode. You know, I don't think we are making great profits, but survival was no longer a question. It reached some level of stability. So I started thinking that and the ambitions were very higher, fortunately or unfortunately. So one started thinking that if you have to make it big, you can't do what the others are doing. Imitation is not an option. You have to innovate and do things differently. Not that if you do things differently, success is guaranteed. But if you imitate, then failure is guaranteed. That much I knew.
Yeah.
So you have to do so. We said कि this is one product that is causing us to get known as a 5 crore company. कि ये company ने एक नया चीज निकाला है. Why don't we look for more unusual things that others have not thought of? Maybe they are niche products. Sometimes what happens is that an unintended use of a product becomes far greater than the intended use, and that is what happened with this metallic paint.
Okay.
Suddenly in the state of Kerala, we were making this in half liter, 1 liter cans, because हम लोग क्या सोचे थे, कोई आदमी ज़्यादा ज़्यादा एक दीवार करेगा as a feature wall. But demand started coming in 20 liters and all for one particular shade copper
In Kerala.
in Kerala. I said,
Okay.
कर क्या रहे हैं लोग? So in Kerala, if you notice, all houses have this sloping roof with terracotta tiles,
Yeah.
which they paint. So somebody had got the bright idea of painting the whole roof with this copper color,
Okay.
which actually when I went and saw it, it looked pretty good. It didn't look gaudy as I had thought it would. And that started catching the fascination of the people. I said, great. I mean, that
You never thought of it, okay.
I mean, it happens to so many products, you know. I mean, like you've all heard of Mr. Godrej who made Godrej hair dye, but it gets used more in UP and Bihar भैंस को रंगने के लिए, you know.
To increase the
ठीक है ना,
price,
I
yeah.
don't think Mr. Godrej minds it. Much larger surface area. Because a black भैंस fetches a better price than a grey भैंस. Incidentally, another story about unintended use, and I'm digressing. At A. Ferguson, where we have a common linkage, this Nigeria, the Madhwani family,
Yeah.
where this
Yeah.
famous actress Mumtaz is married to
Yeah.
Mayur Madhwani. He was the big industrialist in Nigeria. That time he was young. And Nigeria was very, very underdeveloped at that time. And he wanted to set up the first Coca-Cola bottling plant in Nigeria. And he had contacted, because A. Ferguson were regular consultants to the Madhwani Group. So he wanted to know, will a bottled soda, like Coke, will it have a market? Because there was nothing like it in Nigeria. So it was tough to estimate, कि ये चीज उस country में बिकेगा नहीं बिकेगा, So consultants had gone there from A. Ferguson. I was not part of that team. And they were just traveling through various grocery stores and small corner stores to find out कि यहाँ बिकता क्या है. And they found 2 products were flying off the shelf. One was Brill Cream.
Okay.
That styling gel. That time white color का रहता था, glass bottle में आता था, if you remember. You probably have not had much of it.
I was about to say that.
Amit has probably been using too much of it. And the other thing was cherry blossom boot polish.
Okay. White and black, yeah.
And they found it strange because nobody was wearing shoes there. The whole population was walking barefoot. And Brill Cream styling gel looked out of place for a population which was so steeped in poverty. So to their surprise, they found out that cherry blossom boot polish was being used as a hair dye. And Nigeria at that time had no dairy plant. So no butter, cheese, nothing. There was no such thing that existed. And people were applying Brill Cream on bread and eating it, and the population had developed and cultivated a taste for Brill Cream as a substitute for butter. So one had heard of enough stories to know कि हाँ ठीक है ना, unintended लोग लगा रहे हैं, छत पर लगा रहे हैं, metallic paint लगाने दो ना, अपने को क्या तकलीफ है. But then we said let's explore more options like this of products that others have not thought of. And we started consciously at a senior management level spending time with painters and at a dealer outlet, not talking to the dealer but his lowly employee who's actually dealing with the customer. And we started getting ideas thick and fast. कि customer ये भी मांगता है, कोई देता नहीं है, So in the next 6-7 years we came up with 7-8 unique products that others had not thought of. Like a paint for the flooring, for your driveway, your paver blocks or whatever, you can paint all kinds of beautiful colors. A different white paint for the ceiling.
Okay.
Not the same white paint that you apply on the wall.
Okay.
And so on and so forth we came up with. And we started becoming known as a very innovative company. Along with that, we started doing other things differently as time went on. And those things worked. And
But you didn't fear competition copying these products because.
so it was too small initially for them to copy
Okay.
as a niche. In 2012-13, when we started gaining some surplus, we started investing everything back into advertising in a small way to build up the brand. And we only advertise these unique products that we were making. कि इसको तो कोई advertise नहीं करता है. हम wall emulsion करेंगे तो my budgets will be 1% of an Asian Paints or a Berger Paints. हम क्या? I won't stand anywhere. ये सब products कोई नहीं advertise कर रहा है तो इसी को advertise करो. So that's how we started. And unknowingly we created, today a metallic paint or a floor paint is become synonymous with indigo.
Wow.
So as the category became big, all the others did imitate. And there was no rocket science involved in making the product. But it was too small for those companies to spend advertising money behind it. And they would launch a similar product. But the product had become synonymous with indigo. So for those products, the customer or the painter was saying कि indigo का ही चाहिए. And after some time, these companies would give up कि छोड़ो ना बहुत छोटी चीज है, which is fine. So that's how it is continued up till now.
Now, all along we've been told that painter is a very important kind of thing. So is it really on the ground or is it?
No, very much so.
Okay.
Painter, and in larger cities, a painting contractor is a very important influencer for the purchase decision. Like for example, cement, it is the mason. For electrical wires and all that, it is the electrical contractor who's doing your job and all that. So, see, unlike soap, toothpaste, shampoo, which is a monthly purchase item. So the customer has direct knowledge about the product. So nobody can influence you. If you go to a shop and you want a particular brand of a soap, I mean, no shopkeeper will try and say, "Ki nahi, 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 ye naya brand try kijiye na." You will tell him to go jump off because you know what you want.
Yeah.
But paint or cement or these things you purchase once in 6-7 years. So you may be seeing a lot of advertisements, but you have no direct knowledge of that product. तो अगर पेंटर आपको बोल देता है कि आप वो इश्तहार छोड़िए, वो एशियन ओशियन का आप नेरोलैक लगा लीजिए या इंडिगो, as long as he is recommending a brand that you have heard of, you will be quite inclined to follow his advice.
But then, why do most of the paint companies focus their advertising on consumers?
No, so you don't understand that the amount that they spend on the painters and the painting contractors is far more than the money that they're spending on
We don't
advertisement.
see that.
So you don't see that part of it. Every can of paint that you're buying of any company has a rich token inside for the painter, which the painter will quietly take out and he will encash it, which you will never find out. And a lot of gifts and schemes and everything like that are happening. So a lot of time, energy and money goes behind the painters and the painting contractors, far more than what we spend on television advertising. Now television as advertising is important because, as I said, the customer should have heard of your brand. If a painter will come and say, "ये crystal paint खरीद लीजिए, आपने नाम नहीं सुना है," you tell him कि shut up. But if he's recommending a Berger or a Nerolac or an Indigo, you're much more likely to, follow his advice.
Because you've heard the name.
Because you've heard the name. So you say कि ठीक है, ये बोल रहा है तो नाम तो सुना हुआ है.
So there's some.
So you need to do both. You can't do one at the expense of the other.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as you grew and like you said, no longer in survival mode kind of thing. When and how, as a CEO, you decided that I think it's time to get some external funding? That's where Sequoia happened.
So actually, I didn't go after them. The thought of getting private funding had actually not crossed my mind. There was a small investment banker. I think he was working with one of our raw material suppliers and arranging some funding for him. And he heard about us and he just made a cold call to me one day on telephone saying, "I want to come and meet you." I said, "Aye." So he said, "Why don't you take some equity from, one of these venture capital firms?" I said, "Why should I dilute my equity? I'm owning 100%, कोई दरकार नहीं है, काम ठीक से चल रहा है, बैंक लोन वगैरह सब कुछ है, अब ठीक से कंफर्टेबल है." So I shooed him away. He came back after 2-3 weeks, having done far more research on me, on our company basically, and said, "You have high ambitions, but your lifespan is not enough to fulfill them. So you compress time by taking some equity." So I remember one of the persons that took advice was living in my society, Ravi Nigam, also a Thai member, and he had taken some VC funding for his company. So he said, "मिल रहा है तो ले लो." So I said, "I'll, be diluting 20-22% of ownership." So he said, "If it works out, then the company becomes very big. Whether you own 80% or 70% or 90% doesn't matter. There's too much of money at stake. And if it doesn't work out and the company fails and bombs, then whether you own 100% of zero or 80% of zero still doesn't matter,
Okay.
So it appealed to me.
Okay.
So, and that time, what we really needed money for was something that I could not get from a bank because we had reached a point where everything else was set. We needed now to go on to national television. We were using local hoardings, newspapers in some states for advertisement, but we needed capital to splurge onto national television. Banks will not finance you for that. And so I said, okay. And that is when Sequoia came in.
Okay. And so primary purpose was because you were already a national company in terms of distribution, but the
Almost national.
Almost
I would
national.
say we were at 70% of India in terms of some footprint. And Sequoia agreed with that. They said whatever money, I think the first tranche they paid, they invested 50 crores in us. And I remember they said, just put this money away in a bank. Spend whatever you want to do on advertisement. Chances are your revenue will grow enough to finance it.
okay.
So you won't have to dip into this money at all. But it is there
Yeah.
as reserve. Suppose you make a small loss of 1 or 2 crores, you dip
Right.
into it. Otherwise, run it though.
Wow.
That money never got touched.
Oh,
But had it not been there, I would never have taken the courage to splurge that much on advertisement, because if something went wrong, then there was no plan B. So therefore, that gave an excellent advice from them all along. And the company continued to grow by leaps and bounds.
fantastic. How did the competitors react? Suddenly you become national media.
Still too small for them to bother about.
Okay.
Chota bachcha hai, kar raha hai, karne do. So which is good.
Okay.
You know, you try and stay away from giving too many interviews or you know, coming too much in their face or doing this thing. You know, stay under the radar.
Yeah.
And you know, over time one started attending industry forums and I was asked to speak at some of those forums and all that, as more what are the problems that a SME player in the paint sector problem faces and all that. So take care.
That's right.
Those people would come and congratulate me at the end, but you know, we were still in the under 19 league, you know. So we were not in the big league, so they didn't bother us, and that suited us fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was fine.
And how did MSD happen then?
So
So one is why.
Yeah.
And how?
So, MST happened in 2018.
Okay.
So, we had been advertising on television for about 4 years then, and every year the budget had been increasing. And our creative agency, a company called Chlorophyll in Bombay, Kiran Khalab, so he was always dead against the idea of using a celebrity. Whenever I would broach it to him, he used to say, don't. He said it becomes very restrictive then. And the other problem was couldn't think of a right celebrity, because half of our market was South India. When you think of celebrity, the first thing that comes to your mind is some Bollywood star. तो वहाँ तो कोई शाहरुख खान को नहीं पहचानता है, तो क्या करेंगे कोई, लेकिन you know, you didn't have the wherewithal to have different celebrities. And South India, Tamil Nadu is a totally different film market than Kerala, and totally different from Telugu. Each have got their own superstars. तो वहाँ कोई अमिताभ बच्चन और they may have heard the names, but कोई भाव नहीं देता है सबको. I was feeling that still being a small company fighting big giants, against Kiran's advice, I was feeling कि we need a big celebrity so that हम जानते हैं ना कि I'm much smaller than the others, but public तो नहीं जानती है ना. So one day suddenly late in the night I was just walking around. I think I was in a hotel in Hyderabad or somewhere and strolling around in the night after dinner. And thought came that why are we restricting ourselves to Bollywood stars? You know, cricket is something that unites the whole country. And the only two choices were Dhoni or Virat Kohli. And straight away in my mind it was a no-brainer. It is Dhoni, you know, because he is also a small town guy who was risen from nowhere and, you know, defied all the odds. So somehow I felt that culturally it's a good fit. हाँ, Bihar connection भी था. We tried that also. That didn't work very well for the fees, but we tried it. So I talked to Sequoia. They said somebody in Sequoia knew his manager. So Bombay आया, उनका manager आया, and in 1 hour we tied up the deal.
Okay. He didn't have any questions of who you are and what kind of thing.
उसको पैसे से मतलब है, उसको क्या मतलब? I mean, I was not negotiating with Dhoni.
Yeah.
It was with the manager.
Right,
Obviously,
right.
the celebrities will never directly come into the
Yeah,
negotiation and all that. So, yeah, he's been with us now for 7 years, and it's been a wonderful association. And definitely, he's uplifted the status of the company way beyond its actual size.
Okay.
So, that is fine.
So you're saying now the image of the company is bigger than the actual.
For the lay customer, it
Yeah.
is.
Okay. That has really helped.
It has, I think.
Okay. But you also have a mascot.
So when we took Dhoni, or when we were signing Dhoni, I remember I called Kiran Khalap. I said, I'm thinking. So he said I was against the idea, but Dhoni I think would be a great choice.
Okay.
So he said, let me do some homework. After 2-3 days, he said, मिलता है तो कर लीजिए. We'll find a way to creatively use him.
Okay.
And then he came up, I mean, we already had this mascot of a zebra with colored stripes to show that we are a very different company.
Yeah.
You know, that was the idea. So he said, let's bring the zebra to life
Okay.
and have an animated zebra in a banter with Dhoni. So it was a scary concept because I didn't know how it will work out, but it worked out very well.
Dhoni didn't have an issue of having a mascot.
He had no issues at all.
How is he as a person, as ambassador?
He's exactly what he looks on the television screen. He's as down to earth and humble a person as you can find.
Okay.
And
No airs, no egos.
no, and you know, Eklavya was talking about, you know, Shiv Kumar saying that you have to take learnings from others. Of course, he was talking about taking learnings from another company within the same industry, but I would take it a step further that sometimes you get great ideas from people from a very different industry. And sports is a great place to learn. So as somebody who has captained the Indian team, and okay, now over 7 years I've spent so many long hours with him, and we have had so many public sessions of Q&A and all that. The amount of learning that one can have from him is tremendous. And from any seasoned captain of any sport, shall I say, managing 11 people on a team is not easy.
Yeah. 11 talented also.
And very different.
Very different.
And coming from very, very different backgrounds. So there's a lot of learning that can be had from them. And even he says that captaincy takes a lot of energy out of you. He says managing the people and the egos of the players is not easy.
So, if you're a batsman and then you become a captain, to become a good captain while keeping your batting average high is very, very difficult.
No, I don't know about that. But I'm saying is you have to be conscious about many things then as a captain. Field placement. How many bowlers have got how many overs left? Which batsman is going to come in? Which batsman is good? I mean, so many times people have asked him about the same question, you know, the first T20 World Cup.
Why did he give that?
Why did he give that last over to Joginder, this thing, you know? So, now people say it was a master stroke, but that time people couldn't believe कि क्या पागलपंती कर रहा है इसको देख करके. So, he says that frankly I had only two choices that time. It was either him or Harbhajan. And he said the batsman batting was Misbah-ul-Haq. And he said I played against Misbah-ul-Haq from under 17 times. And he's a super player under spin, against spin. So he said I could not take a chance with Haji.
Yeah.
So he said I really had no option. I had to toss the ball to the only other guy who had an over left.
Correct.
And he said that guy had something to prove. People say it was a gamble, but it was no gamble. He said against Harbhajan he would have got creamed by Misbah-ul-Haq. So he said it worked.
Okay.
So, you know, you have to think about many other things, I guess, when you become a captain,
Sure.
which you don't have to when you're just a batsman.
Yeah. Now coming back to the Sequoia part, as a founder, CEO, how did your life change once they came on board? Or did it?
A little bit. Previously, you were answerable only to yourself. So, you didn't have to explain your decisions to anyone. And yeah, I mean, nobody else, I mean, whether you did well or badly or, you know, whatever, it was all within yourself. Now suddenly you have somebody who owns a certain percentage of the company, you feel a moral obligation. Not that they are probably one of the most refined venture capital investors that you can find. I'm sure it's not the same with all other VCs. But with Sequoia, they're very long term. So they don't press you into giving short-term results.
So no
They
Q-
have a horizon of 6-7 years and
so no QSQT kind of thing.
not at all at that stage.
Okay.
So it was very, very long-term thinking, excellent advice from them, excellent hand-holding whenever you required it, and if you didn't require it, they would not breathe down your neck at all.
Okay.
So that way it was great. It brought in a lot of governance within the company, so it was a good stepping stone. Because one of the things they do when they invest is, first of all, you have to appoint a Big Four auditor.
Okay.
So the moment Ernst & Young came in, I mean, getting a Big Four auditor cleans up a lot of practices and policies within your company. You get forced into it.
That would be painful.
It feels a little painful, but if it's a mature auditor, they don't try to clamp down on you in one day. They'll slowly tighten the strings in a course of 2 years. हाँ, जोर का झटका धीरे धीरे देंगे. So you realize it's for the good. And there are so many minor laws in the company that you're not even aware of. So you're violating them more out of ignorance.
Okay.
And there is no policing for many of those things. Like I didn't know at that time when they first invested that there was a law against throwing away a used calculator. I mean, there is a mandate for e-waste,
Ah, okay,
electronic
yeah.
waste, and how it is to be disposed of, what forms you're supposed to keep. But it's simple, na? कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. So you find from them that you're forced into compliance with everything, and suddenly you discover in 6 months that hey, I'm now today compliant with every known law in the country, and it wasn't as difficult as it was.
Okay.
Let's maintain it.
Yeah.
So it does all that. It brings in a certain discipline of timing, of making a monthly P&L, and much of it we were doing earlier, but it got more refined. So I think, and having a formal board meeting first of all. Previously, when you are privately owned 100%, board meetings are only on paper.
Correct.
But here you have to have a formal quarterly board meeting or something like that, because and those were long board meetings with a lot of inputs on both sides. So and you appoint a couple of independent auditors, although you're not mandatorily required to, but Sequoia encouraged it. So you started seeing the value in all of those things. And therefore, yes, there was change from earlier stage to post Sequoia. But because of that long period of hand-holding, when we moved to being a listed company, there was not much of a change because you're already into that habit by then.
But one of the reasons why you said that I didn't want to take orders. So did orders come from your?
Never.
Never. So you still had that kind of freedom.
Complete flexibility.
And moving from a private company to a funded company was easier as a CEO from a mindset perspective, or moving from a funded company to now eventually a listed company was easier?
So there are minor changes, but you have to accept that change, that you have to accept that some things will change. And if you're mentally prepared for it, I don't think it's much of a problem. So
Okay.
I
And,
didn't face any significant
okay.
problem.
So there's no change in you per se as a person.
No, not really.
Okay. One of the main reasons why you said you went for funding was that being national media.
Advertising, yeah.
What was the reason for being public?
So, couple of reasons. One is we went public in early 21. So Sequoia was already invested in us for about 6.5 years. So they were reaching the end of life. So although there was no great pressure from them, but we knew sooner or later we have to give them an exit option.
Yeah.
And what better way than having a public listing. Secondly, we had started giving ESOPs in a big way to our people. That is one thing. Another thing that Sequoia had introduced and encouraged us to do, and we embraced it. And that time when you're not publicly listed, there is no transparent value of those shares.
Yeah.
So Sequoia came to our annual conferences and told our people that we will do a fair market valuation at the end of 4 years. And whoever wants to sell that ESOPs, we will be the buyer.
Okay.
And we'll buy it at a fair market value. And people had developed some trust in Sequoia. So But every time at the end of 4 years, I had to negotiate on behalf of the employees who had the ESOPs with Sequoia to make sure that they were not being shortchanged. So the other thing was that, and we wanted to give ESOPs more and more in a bigger and bigger way to employees. So what better way than to make it transparent?
Pricing is transparent.
Yeah, pricing becomes transparent once you're quoted in the stock market. And the third thing is that, the primary capital that we raised during the IPO was fairly small. That we could have got from a bank also. That was the least important reason for going public. The other thing is that it does a lot to the branding of the company. Forget about the advertising value of it, but to attract good talent.
Okay.
So prior to going public, if I would try and attract talent from, let's say, a Berger or a Nerolac or an Axo, the guys would not turn up for an interview.
Even if they knew Sequoia funded.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was tough. After listing, no problem at all. There's a queue of people from those companies willing to join us. So things change a lot in public perception.
Employer brand changed. Employer branding changed.
Employer branding changes. Your how you're looked upon by your suppliers changes completely.
Okay.
They feel a much higher sense of security in offering credit, etc.
Okay.
And you become known. So it's not only in India, but even with foreign suppliers. Somehow intangibly, you can feel the difference between what it was before you were publicly listed and what it is now. So things get easier in many ways.
Sure. Okay. Was that a unintended or kind of thing?
One knew that
Surprising?
it will help in branding, but more from an employee acquisition viewpoint, not from the other viewpoints. But the others were.
They feel safer that you are a publicly listed kind of
Yes,
thing.
they are.
Okay. Lovely. Now, what next for Indigo?
I think we're just starting off. Miles to
25
go.
years.
Miles to go.
Okay. But
So-
you have any kind of, now you're national, any other plans?
So one would like to make it a much bigger company. We are now 5th in the pecking order.
Okay.
So I think number 1 is going to be tough in my lifetime. But can we try for number 2 in the next 10 years? Very stretch,
Okay.
but possible. Good goal to strive for.
Yeah, sure. So, 10 years down the line to be number 2 in India would mean what kind of top line?
So today number 2 is Berger. Asian Paints at a turnover is 30,000 crores. Market cap is 2,30,000 crores.
Okay.
Berger top line is 10,000 crores. Market cap is 60,000 crores.
Wow.
So possible.
Okay.
Possible.
So 10 years they'll be even bigger.
They would be. Yeah. So, but I'm saying that it's a good goal to shoot for.
Okay.
You try for that. May or may not get it, but no harm in trying.
Sure. One final, I think we are running out of time, but a lot of young people here, young students as well as startup, kind of feel any word of advice for them before we go into audience questions?
Well, the young people that you're saying are students. It's too young to give advice to them for entrepreneurship or something. But
There are young startup people as well, so.
I guess you need to have the courage to be different. If you want any chance of success, you may still not succeed. It's a tough road. You're talking about why or how many people want to be CEOs, but it gets pretty lonely at the top. So that's the other tough part of it. All through your life as a student, you've been used to somebody writing your report card. You get your marks, you get a grade, you get something, and even in a job, you get a performance appraisal. You don't realize how much of a security comfort that gives you. Somebody is appraising you, and if they have ranked you good, it feels nice. And if they have not ranked you very good, then you strive to improve upon that. As a CEO, you have to write your own report card. There is nobody to write it for you. And that's a very unsettling experience that I cannot explain to you. So you have to be comfortable in doing that. And you definitely, as a CEO, you're not, or as an entrepreneur, you're not in the job of winning a popularity contest or a beauty contest. So you may have to do things that are not very popular in the company, but if you really feel that that is what is required, then you have to just go ahead and do it. And that's it. And you can't afford to be, I mean, you need not shout at people or humiliate them or something, but if some stern change of course of action is to be taken, you can find a nice and a polite way to put it across, but you have to be firm that, yeah, this is how it's going to be. And these are some of the traits that you have to learn to follow if you are going to be either an entrepreneur or a CEO in a professionally managed company. An entrepreneur by default is a CEO of his company. So these are some of the difficulties, and you have to learn to spend a lot of sleepless nights when you'll curse yourself as to why you went into this. But always remember, the next morning is always better. So, as the night passes, things do get a little better.
Lovely. You mentioned about next 10 years. I'm going to ask you beyond that. What's the legacy you want to leave behind?
Well, definitely one wants to leave behind a company that outlives me. So, I thought that I'll continue to run this company for another 7, 8, 10 years or something. But as I said, I keep interacting with CEOs or entrepreneurs that I respect, which are not necessarily the Unilever kind of people. But I had a wonderful meeting with Harsh Mariwala of Marico, whom I respect a lot. Sometimes people within the industry, like the owner of Berger Paints, Mr. Kuldeep Singh Dhingra, I met him actually just 2 weeks ago. Almost once a year, I'm invited to his house whenever I'm in Delhi, and I love interacting with him. And he always learns so much from these people. So Harsh Mariwala is the one who finally convinced me that I'd gone to him before the meeting was set up. He wanted a 2-page or a 1-page note on 2 or 3 major problems that I was facing in my company, in which I needed some different idea. And I mentioned that to him, but when I went to meet him, he had that printout of my whatever I had sent him with copious notes on both sides of the margin. So he was very well prepared for it. And the first question he asked me, which was not on my problem list, was, "What are you doing about succession planning?" I said, "I'm in good health. I think I can run for another 7, 8 years, and maybe a couple of years before I want to step down, I'll think about appointing somebody." And he said, "This is stupid." So he said, "I'm 73. And this is about a year ago." So he said, "I gave up managing directorship of Marico when I was 63. He said, "I'm not retired. I come to office full time. I sit on a different floor. I'm very involved with the company, but in a very different way." And he said, "That is what you should be doing." And he said, "You're already late in it, but don't waste any time." And he said to find the right CEO and to breed him into the job is going to take a couple of years. So he said, "Start on that process." So one has started and almost finalized somebody. So same thing with Mr. Dhingra of Berger. He left over managing directorship of Berger even earlier. He's today 76 or 77. I asked him, I said, "Sir, आप ऑफिस जाते हैं?" He said, "जनाब साहब, घर में तो बैठने की आदत नहीं है, तो ऑफिस तो पूरा जाते ही हैं." तो he says, "वो तो घर में तो बैठ ही नहीं सकता." But he said, day-to-day decisions जो MD है कंपनी का, वो देखता है. तो he said, मैंने बहुत पहले ही वो चीज कर दिया. So one has learned that appointing a CEO and stepping aside does not mean retirement, but it means changing the nature of what you're doing. And Harsh Mariwala point blank asked me, he said, "You're 67. What if something happens to you tomorrow? You say you want to live Either you say that I want to sell my company, तब तो बात अलग है. But if you don't want to do that, then he said, even for me, he said, anything can happen to me today. But he said, I want this company to survive much after I have gone by.
But you know, both these examples, I go to office every day but don't get involved in day-to-day operations. Easier said than done.
I don't think you can sit at the same place. You'll probably have to move to a different floor or a different location for sure. So you can't be, continue to meddle inside that. And so you have to, I think that delegating is going to be an art that I will have to learn once, somebody steps into that role. But I think I'll be able to do it.
Great. We've run out of time, but maybe a couple of questions from anyone.
A question here. So you mentioned that Sequoia came and they started changing the processes, and you're still struggling with talent, right? How did you solve for that? And kind of, it's a more of you're getting a CFO for a public listing, which is totally different ballgame, right?
In terms of skill set, in terms of experience that they bring, how do you manage to A, attract those people, and B, to work with them who are more capable than you in some role which you have hired them for?
Same gentleman, Mr. Harsh Mariwala, I'd heard him at a Sequoia conference about 6-7 years ago in a different environment. And he was talking about the time when he had finished his studies and took over the reins of this company, which at that time was called Bombay Oil. And it was a very, very traditional company. It made cooking oil. And that's all it did. And it used to be sold in those rectangular tins. If you remember the olden times, how cooking oil used to be sold and all that. And it was a smallish company. So he said, अच्छे आदमी तो आते ही नहीं थे. Who is going to leave a cushy job in a PNG or a Levers or something to come and work for Bombay Oil, selling cooking oil? So he said, you have to realize that you have to deal with average talent. A, you can't afford to pay very high. And even if you could afford to pay very high, those people will not come to you. Because your job lacks the sex appeal that they're looking for. So you have to be limited to average talent. But he said within that average talent, you'll find some rough diamonds. And those are the people that you have to push up. And that's what we have done all along. And we didn't recruit any CFO when we went public. Our CFO joined us in the year 2001 when he was 24 years old as an accountant. But he had the capacity to keep upgrading his skills as time went on and as the company grew. And he remains the CFO today. He's not a slick talker. Who cares? Our auditors would have initially problems कि नहीं आपको you need a really polished CFO and all that. I said आपका काम हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है आप ये बताइए ना. His accounts, everything in proper, सब कुछ हो रहा है. Why are you going after somebody's communication abilities and spoken English or something like that? उससे क्या लेना देना है? So after working with him sometime, these auditors, after a year, they said nahi. They stopped talking about this nonsense. And the other thing is that you have to offer them something else, which is what we did with ESOPs, etc. That the really good people, if you ply them with good ESOPs, and if the company does well, and if the guy suddenly makes 2 crores, 3 crores by selling ESOP, and then you give him more ESOPs, वो कहाँ जाएगा? कहीं नहीं जाता. And then that word starts spreading in the industry. And then people from other companies, as you grow big, are they saying कि नहीं बहुत सुना है आपका ESOP के बारे में. Today Asian नहीं देता है, Burgeon नहीं देता है, कोई नहीं देता है. We are the only guy in the paint industry that gives it in a reasonable way, so it's very easy to attract good talent from there now.
Thank you.
Hemant sir, one question was on typically as you have grown as the head CEO of the organization, how have your priorities as a leader for the organization changed? Like how do you spend earlier you might have spent time a lot of it on the operational role, setting systems, processes. Maybe now into more strategic. So, how's
Yeah, that is a very natural progression that happens. And I think you don't realize it as it happens, but not involved in any day-to-day nitty-gritty anymore. Whereas 10 years ago, I'm sure I would have been doing all those things myself or going through it with a tooth comb. So you have to learn to delegate. As you grow, you can't possibly be doing everything yourself. So you are dealing with hired managers. And once you find a guy is competent and is following the right process and taking the right decision, then you stop looking at it with a magnifying glass. You trust. You have to learn to trust those people, and that's how an organization will move. And then you start spending your time on other strategic things. Ab aur naya kya kare? And sometimes those ideas will come from within your group, sometimes not. But ultimately, you have to sift through it and come up with maybe 2 or 3 new directions that the company has to take and discuss it out with your group that this is what I feel. And if you can feel a good vibe with the rest of the team on 1 or 2 of them, then you just go ahead and implement it. And I'm not very busy now. I spend the full 8 hours in the office 6 days a week, but much of the time I don't have anything to do, but I'm comfortable with that. That's when the creative ideas will come. So you don't have to be busy with a pen and paper and doing something. If I don't have something to do, I'm fine playing a video game for 10 minutes on my mobile, but while doing that, the mind is somewhere else. And some idea may come, it may come sitting in the office, it may come sitting on the pot in the morning in your toilet, it may come at any time. But I guess I've learned to become comfortable with the fact that I don't have active work for more than 2 hours in a day, which is fine.
I'll come to you.
Hello, sir. It was very, very illuminating what you said.
Thank
I have 2
So
questions.
You just hold it closer to your mouth. Yes.
I have 2 questions.
That's still not working.
No, not still working.
Yeah, now it's working.
I have 2 questions. One is that the function of a CEO is to ensure that the productivity is increased all the time. The bottlenecks are removed, and make sure that the employees get a continuously productive environment. So how much of your time do you spend doing that? That's my first question.
So,
Second,
and let me answer that. Otherwise, I'll forget your first question by the time you ask the second question. Productivity will matter in certain kinds of businesses. They may not matter so much in every kind of business.
okay.
So, if it is a more manufacturing-led thing or some
No, not only manufacturing, it's just general organizational productivity.
So ours
Solving
is very much a
bottlenecks.
sales and marketing oriented thing. So if you, at least on the manufacturing side, if there is some improvement in productivity or something, it's not going to make much of a change. However, it doesn't mean that modern machinery or modern, more productive tools are not important. So at least once in a year, one would attend some international trade fair for the paint industry, where one is exposed to newer raw materials and one is also exposed to newer machinery that is developing. So you have to keep up to speed with that. One such international good, trade show in a year is good enough to keep you abreast with that as far as productivity is concerned. Within your organization, other than manufacturing, we have invested a lot in work automation. So rather than doing things, first of all, we implemented ERP, SAP way back in 2011 when we were a 20-25 crore company. So that was one big automation that we did. But after that, today lot of, shall I say, automated reports, and those reports evolve almost every week with newer demands. Yeah, I want it sliced this way, that way. So you need a small team of really good quality young people who can generate those things and give it in the format that you want. That has helped a lot in decision making.
Okay.
So I think automation of data in decision making. I hear that AI is going to revolutionize all this, but I haven't seen it yet. So at the moment, for me, it is more of a hype or a buzzword than a proven reality, but I'm sure it will come.
Okay.
So one has to be open to all those kinds of ideas also. But I think the real thing is to process data better, faster, for at least our kind of business.
Thank you. My second question, this one was at a micro level. Now I'm going to ask you a macro level question, with your permission. I believe Mr. or Dr. Mariwala is a past student of UDCT, University
sure.
Department of Chemical Technology.
Yeah, UDCT is a very famed place for
Yeah.
chemical
So-
technology, but I didn't know that he was from there.
Yeah, he is from there.
Okay.
And that's what I've heard. The question is related to that particular aspect. UDCT has given so many people to the country, in textiles, in dyes, in oils, fats and wax, technologies, chemical engineering, everywhere. So, have you thought of setting up a school for paint technology, in a very small way? Like you are from Stanford, and it was a very heartening story about how Stanford was started by the old couple.
Yes.
So similarly, have you thought of on similar lines to start a college of technology for paints?
No, I don't think that idea has crossed my mind. And it's running an educational institute is a completely different business than
No, I know. But,
running this thing. It requires very different skill sets. I'm not sure if I have it.
I'm sure you have.
I doubt it.
No, not
Because
you
running an
personally, but
educational
your
institute is
organization.
very, very different. I don't think I have the professional background to do that. And why would I want to start a school? There are schools with paint technology. UDCT itself has a refined department in paint technology.
Yeah, that's where
There is
this,
something called
Mariwala came
HPTI at Kanpur,
Yeah.
which also has a refined course in paint technology, and more are emerging.
Okay.
And UDCT has now set up campuses outside Bombay also,
That's right. Yeah.
where they're having it. But no, I've not given any thought to setting up a school to do that, and I doubt if I'd have the expertise to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
One question from a student, yeah. One.
Jain sir, I am Ranal Chaudhary and I am from IIBM College. My question is, as you have come a long way and now you are at the peak of your success, if you got a chance to give some advice to your younger self, so what would it be?
Younger self in what context?
Sir, as in
I
if,
mean, advice on
Advice.
what? On entrepreneurship, on professional, on how to make a girlfriend, or what not to do. I mean, advice on what aspect of life would you
sir,
talk
maybe
about?
maybe any kind of valuable advice which can help you to grow in more efficient way.
I mean, and it's hard to answer a very general question like that. All I can say is that follow your heart. I mean, don't go after set patterns or necessarily what your father or your uncle or what your relative or what your friend is telling. तुम्हारा दिल क्या कहता है? What is it that makes you tick? What is it something that will give you? Because ultimately in your working life, you have to enjoy what you're doing. So every Sunday you should be feeling bored and you should be craving for Monday morning so that you can get back to office. The day you find that job, that is the right job, or that is the right career for you. So you can't force yourself to do anything. So I think you have to delve into your inner soul and find out what is it that gives you joy and follow that rather than following any set pattern of any idol or anything like that. अब क्या बोलेंगे? बहुत बार छोटे बच्चे आते हैं when we are shooting with Dhoni on the sets and कि sir what cricket academy should I join? So he says अभी तुम 10 साल के हो, play every possible sport that you can. Find out what you're good in. When you're 16, 17, 15 years old, then think about joining that particular academy. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be cricket. Maybe you like boxing, maybe you like field hockey, maybe you like basketball. So why? He started out with football, as you have seen in his movie, and then moved to cricket.
Yes.
So he suddenly found that, this was attractive to him and he changed. So you have to find something that is close to your heart. That's all I can say in life, in anything.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Good evening, sir. I'm Suresh Latte. I belong to healthcare industry actually. I wanted to know, sir, ki, by creating any brand, as you created this Indigo brand, there must be some strategies, some numbers, and some market value behind it. But visually, it has some emotional value also behind that brand. And in your entire journey, sir, you started with a small unit to till the date of 5,000 crore this turnover of the company. There must be some moment and up downs. That time you might be you could feel ke ab bas ho gaya. You are losing the hopes in your own brand, and you sometimes distrust your vision and the dreams also. That moment also always coming. So how you tackle that, and what helps you to tackle these things with the previous setback, which you closed the business and you started the job. So what
one learned lessons from that setback.
Yeah, I wanted to know
one learned
things.
some valuable lessons, and there is no better school than failure. Once you have failure and you have gone through the excruciating moments in your life, when you encounter that failure, if you make the same mistake a second time, then you're an idiot. But everybody is entitled to make one major mistake in his life, and provided he learns from it and then make sure that he does not make that same. So one could, after some time, process that in my mind, where did I go wrong? And one could identify where one had gone wrong and made sure that in future life you don't make that same mistake again. As far as Indigo is concerned, I don't think I ever encountered a time when I said bas ho gaya and ye khatam ho raha hai or something. Aisa kabhi aaya nahi. And I don't think that I'm at the peak of my career. I think we have a very long way to go. So I don't agree that we are at the peak at all. I'd be highly disappointed if this is the peak.
One last question, yeah.
Yeah, good evening. I remember about 10-15 years ago when Indigo Paints stood out in having water-soluble exterior paints, and which was something that even the giants did not have. In the last 10 years, with so much more talk about the environment and real concerns because of climate change, one would have expected that to have almost become the norm. Has it really happened? And if not, why not?
No, I think you're slightly misinformed. Water-based paints, both exterior and interior, have become the norm in India for the last 25 to 30 years, way before Indigo Paints was born. So it is not that we were the pioneers in that at all. So these water-based emulsion paints for both exterior and interior, and generally water-based paints are far more, shall I say, environment friendly and eco-friendly than solvent-based paints. So 30 years ago, solvent-based paints in India were like 60-65% and water-based were 30-35%. Today it's like 80% is water-based, and solvent-based paints are restricted to enamels which go on wood and metal, or some kinds of wood polishes. Everything else has long ago moved to water-based across the industry.
Mr. Jalan, mine is not a question. Mine is an admiration. You have come across as a person with so much humility and so much of authenticity. Notwithstanding your background from Stanford, people normally think if you're not from Harvard or Stanford, you're either backward or awkward. All right? Now, here is a person who carries probably the best of academic credentials, who is willing to admit a major failure, bounces back into employment, listens to his heart, and he says, I wasn't meant to be an employee. I have to get back into what God designed me for, come back, create Indigo, went through the third class AC compartment journeys and achieved so much. The best takeaway that I've heard from you today is innovation may not guarantee success, but imitation guarantees failure. Absolutely bang on. As you can see, I'm a person with a lot of experience. I'm a corporate creature, now an academic by choice. I've listened to you with the kind of attention, including the pauses in your talk, that it has been a great education for me and a great inspiration for me. Thank you so very much, Mr. Jalan.
Thank you. And a lot of this, I draw inspiration from our own brand ambassador, MS Dhoni. The humility that man has, you have to be with him to believe it. It's unbelievable. And I remember once I had visited his house in Ranchi 2 years ago or something. And I was there for dinner and he introduced me to his parents. And I asked his father, I said, आपने क्या सीख दिया है इस लड़के को कि इतनी ऊंचाई पहुंचने के बाद भी इसमें घमंड नाम की एक छटाक नहीं है. I said, ये चीज हम लोग अपने बच्चों में नहीं ला पाए. तो हमने कहा कभी आपके साथ बैठ करके समझना है कि हम लोग ने कहाँ गलती की. And this man, okay, now he's slowly fading away. He stopped playing for India for the last 5 years or so, but he's still a very, very big icon. If you go to any IPL match, the moment he comes in to bat, the whole stadium breaks down. There's a different charm to see him. And we call him to any function after all the photographs and posing are done. उनको बोलते हैं चलिए अब. He'll always look at the photographer and say, तुमको भी फोटो खिंचवाना है. And you're dazed. उसकी तो बेचारे की हिम्मत नहीं है. He's been hired for the occasion. और of course he wants a photograph with Dhoni, but उसकी मजाल नहीं है कि वो पूछ ले. And then वो बुलाएगा and then he'll ask somebody कि जरा उसका कैमरा लेकर करके फोटो खींच लीजिए. And it's happened 3-4 times. And every time I forget कि फोटोग्राफर को भी बोले, he never forgets. That is the kind of humility that he has. तो आपने भी जो बोला ना, अगर आप उनकी मूवी देखिए, MS Dhoni, The Untold Story, इनमें everything is, where he vouches that everything is absolutely accurate in that movie. तो गवर्नमेंट जॉब मिला हुआ उसके फादर के लिए, तो that was the biggest thing as a ticket collector. But he just felt कि this is not what I want to do. This is not what I am enjoying. To keep jumping from one platform to another, इधर 22 down जा रहा है और इधर 91 up जा रहा है. And he just gave up that job. He followed his father, didn't speak to him for months after that. But he could have failed. But he followed his heart and it worked for him. So
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hemant Jalan. So,